destruction tonight and into the weekend. Plus, the world hits back at President Trump's tariffs, how Wall Street and Main Street are reacting to the worldwide trade war, and then cracking down on human trafficking. What survivors have to say about how easy it was for them to be taken advantage of. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. A very happy Friday to all of you. But once again, we begin with severe storms making their way across the middle of the country back to the Mississippi Valley region. As you take a look at the very active system right here behind me, 70 million Americans at risk right now, with the worst of it coming later tonight over Arkansas. Then tomorrow, the threat of severe storms and weather not as pronounced, but still very, very heavy rains, high winds, and a strong chance of hail over Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, and then western Tennessee right there. These states, they have been battered by storms the last few days. And by the time the weekend ends, as you take a look right here, you see the heavy rains that are expected. That area in orange, red, could see anywhere from 5 to 12 inches of rain through Sunday, bringing the potential for life-threatening flooding. Already over a dozen high water rescues yesterday in Nashville. This is what it looked like in Lake City, Arkansas. This morning, you can see all of the trees and the destruction to the tops of those homes. According to the state's emergency management office, 22 counties suffered damage from tornadoes, wind, hail, and/or flash flooding.
Then I started feeling the debris down. And once I felt the debris going, coming into the storm cellar, and my kids were screaming, my mom was screaming, I was freaking out. I knew right then. I grabbed them, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it going to be as bad as what, you're thinking? And it just felt, like I said, it felt like 5 minutes, but it just, something that I would never relive again.
The death toll from these storms is now up to at least 8 over the last 3 days, as 11 states have been impacted by these storms. Stay with us as we continue to track tonight's weather developments throughout the night. We'll have coverage for you right here at 10 tonight and online at thenationaldesk.com. President Trump's escalating trade war is causing stocks to plummet for a second straight day today. The S&P 500 fell 6% and the Dow dropped by 2,200 points as China announced retaliatory tariffs. Companies got caught up in uncertainty, and firms like JP Morgan raised their odds of a recession. The National News Desk, Atra El-Nashar, has the very latest on this and why the White House stands by its new trade policy.
On the second day of fallout from President Trump's worldwide tariff plan, a split-screen reaction to global markets in freefall.
And the market sells off again.
NASDAQ 100 set to enter a bear market.
If you wanted to make the market crash, I think you would go with this game plan.
If you ask the Trump administration, all is well.
Markets are crashing because markets are based on the stock value of companies who today are embedded in modes of production that are bad for the United States.
This is a great time to get rich, richer than ever before, President Trump posted on social media. And after Friday morning's jobs report showed 228,000 jobs were created in March, he wrote, "Great jobs numbers, far better than expected. It's already working. Hang tough, we can't lose." But the jobs report was overshadowed by news that China is retaliating against Trump's tariffs with additional 34% tariffs on American products. With more countries expected to hit back, and soon, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says a couple things are becoming clear.
That tariff increases will be significantly larger than expected. And the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth.
A recipe for a worst-case scenario, says JP Morgan.
As things stand now, we're headed to recession.
But President Trump, who says my policies will never change, is betting that all the economists are wrong and that his tariffs will correct what he calls major trade imbalances between the U.S. and trading partners, incentivize those trading partners to eliminate tariffs on American products, and push companies to move production here to the U.S. But even Trump says that could take a couple years, if it works. How long will Republicans buy into this strategy?
In the long run, we're all dead. Short run matters too.
The White House distributing these talking points to Republicans on Capitol Hill to promote the Trump tariffs as a gateway to a new golden age. Some in the GOP admit there's no guarantee of a light at the end of this tunnel. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atrell Nishar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
United Auto Workers Union President Shawn Fain speaking on CNN, saying Stellantis is using its employees as collateral damage as President Trump hikes tariffs.
We could be producing Ram trucks right back at Warren Truck, where they've been producing them for 80 years within a month. It's a choice the company's making. And it's a choice the company's making to sacrifice employees today versus doing the right thing.
Fain said Stellantis could use its excess capacity in Michigan instead of temporarily pausing operations. He said the auto company had months to prepare before the tariff announcement to implement changes comparable to Ford and General Motors. Cities across the country are preparing for mass protests tomorrow against the Trump administration's actions. One of the biggest will be in D.C., where crews have set up large fences outside the White House. Around 10,000 people are expected to show up. The Secret Service says it's working with local police to ensure everyone's safety. And 9 more MS-13 members arrested, this time in Broward County, Florida. All authorities say are connected to at least one of 4 cold case murders between 2014 and 15. 5 of those who are arrested have pleaded guilty. 3 others of the gang members possibly face life in prison or deportation if convicted. Attorney General Pam Bondi says the government is reviewing the cases.
We're here to announce the arrest of 3 more MS-13 gang members who were in this country illegally, and they were in Florida, and we will be reviewing them. They've all been arrested for first-degree murder. We will be reviewing them to see if we will seek the death penalty.
A federal judge has now ordered the U.S. to return a Maryland man mistakenly deported to an El Salvador prison. 29-year-old Kilmar Abrego Garcia now must return within the next 3 days. The White House claims he's an MS-13 gang member and that their hands are tied since he's in Salvadorian custody. Still, they admit his deportation was an error. Abrego Garcia's lawyers argue there's no evidence he is a gang member. He fled gang threats in 2011 and a U.S. judge granted him protection. The University of South Carolina is mourning the death of a student killed in a hit and run near the USC campus. Authorities say Nathaniel Baker of Virginia was hit by a pickup truck on Wednesday while driving his motorcycle. An illegal immigrant, Rosali Fernandez Cruz, is now facing charges. The National News Desk, Kiana Jordan reports.
Tears shed as dozens of friends and family gathered at the corner of Blossom and Assembly Street in Columbia Thursday at a memorial honoring Nathaniel Nate Baker. The 21-year-old died after a hit-and-run crash Wednesday not far from that memorial.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who could say they had a bad experience with him. He was just so friendly, nice, kind, giving. I filled the room with joy wherever he was.
People leaving flowers in front of the university's Strom Thurmond Wellness Center all day and night and writing messages of love in chalk on the pavement.
It's just super sad, but it makes me really happy seeing all these people come together and write a lot of nice things down, say a lot of nice things. It just shows that a lot of people really cared for him and loved him just like he loved everyone.
According to Columbia Police, 24-year-old Rosalie Fernandez Cruz failed to yield at the intersection of Blossom Street and Assembly, hitting Baker, who was on a motorcycle, and drove off. Baker later died at the hospital. Fernandez Cruz was arrested several blocks away. Officers say he has been wanted by federal immigration officials since 2018. State leaders like Attorney General Alan Wilson expressing outrage Thursday.
This is something I have been hammering home. The last month or so, I have met with literally or nearly every sheriff in the state and numerous police chiefs in municipalities around South Carolina to engage in what is called the 287G program. It is a federal program that allows local law enforcement to perform immigration enforcement actions like ICE.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace also releasing a statement reading in part, quote, "We're going to fight like hell to get every last illegal alien out of South Carolina." However, Nate Baker's friends say Fernandez Cruz is not the focus.
I feel a little bit of anger, but it's more, I'm focused on the loss of him, not exactly what happened. You know, obviously people make mistakes, anything can happen. It's more just about him.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement has temporarily released a Venezuelan man who traveled to the U.S. to help his brother in need of a kidney transplant. 43-year-old Jose Gregorio Gonzalez was detained by ICE outside Chicago last month. And according to the nonprofit The Resurrection Project, he was granted supervised release for 1 year on humanitarian grounds. New developments: Texas is one step closer to passing their first ever school choice bill. Legislation that would create an education savings account is now headed to the state house floor. If enacted, the bill would give low-income families $10,000 per student for tuition to a school of their choice. Governor Abbott made this a priority issue. He successfully campaigned this past election season to replace House Republicans who opposed the measure last year. And British comedian Russell Brand has been charged in the UK with rape and sexual assault. These charges stem from complaints by several women. Investigators say the alleged crimes happened between 1999 and 2005. The 50-year-old has previously denied allegations against him, saying his relationships were always consensual. Brand is due in court in London on May 2nd. Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs is facing 2 additional charges, according to a superseding indictment filed today. Prosecutors added 1 count of sex trafficking and 1 count of transportation to engage in prostitution relating to alleged victim 2. Combs has pleaded not guilty to existing racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking charges. His trial begins next month. Coming up, a major change to TikTok's future. The latest on the fate of this popular but controversial app. Then later, how a simple job offer can lead to young people becoming victims of human trafficking within days or weeks. Then the action a traveling hairstylist is taking to get Rhode Island to let her to continue serving communities. We're back in 90 seconds. TikTok will Not be shut down in the United States tomorrow. President Trump announcing today he will sign an executive order to keep TikTok up and running for another 75 days. Tomorrow is the deadline for TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance to sell the platform, or it would be banned in the U.S. Trump says his administration is working very hard on a deal to save TikTok.
We have a situation with TikTok where China will probably
24, citing only 2% of transactions happen through the app. Users can still act. 24 are believed to be alive, but this new operation over the last week or so is creating a different dynamic than what President Trump discussed when he came back into office in January. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joins us from West Palm Beach, Florida, where she asked the president about the new situation.
The United States and Israel's relationship appears to be on solid ground, even as Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel plans to divide up Gaza and seize control of parts of it. Aboard Air Force One.
Have you talked to Netanyahu recently? Israel has now talked about staying in Gaza, doing long-term occupation. Has anything changed in regard to the U.S. Gaza-Israel plans?
I spoke to him today, as a matter of fact, and I think he's going to be coming to our country sometime in the not-too-distant future, maybe next week. And we'll speak about Israel, we'll speak about what's going on. That's another thing we'd like to get solved, and I think we will get it solved. I think he very well may be coming.
Netanyahu was the first foreign leader to visit Trump during his second term. While Republicans remain largely united in support for Israel, the war in Gaza remains a contentious issue for the Democrats, dividing the party. This week, 15 Democratic senators voted in favor of withholding billions of dollars worth of weapons sales and other military aid from Israel, an effort led by Senator Bernie Sanders.
The Netanyahu government of Israel has killed more than 50,000 people in Gaza. The United States must end our complicity in these atrocities. We cannot be part of this any longer.
We're also learning the Trump administration has moved forward on a $24 million arms sale to Israel. While this is a relatively small transaction when it comes to military deals, it is notable because the Biden administration delayed this specific deal over humanitarian rights concerns. Dee Dee, back to you.
All right, Kayla, thank you. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio back in the U.S. after 2 days in Brussels meeting with NATO allies. He says he remains optimistic. A ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine is still achievable, but they need to start seeing some more movement in that direction.
President Trump's not going to fall into the trap of endless negotiations about negotiations. We won't know soon enough whether or not Russia's serious about peace. If they are, that'll be great. Then we can move towards peace. If they're not, then we'll have to reevaluate where we stand and what we do moving forward.
Rubio says there are some promising signs coming from talks with Russia and Ukraine, but also troubling signs. Meantime, Britain and France accuse Russian President Vladimir Putin of delaying ceasefire efforts. Russia accuses unspecified nations of trying to spoil its talks with the U.S. It's referred to as modern-day slavery, human trafficking on a daily basis right here in the United States. Spotlight on America correspondent Christine Frizzell shows us how this vicious cycle of victimization is able to carry on.
It can start out innocently enough. An offer for a job to work in a hotel, restaurant, or casino. But within days or weeks, young people across this country can become victims of human trafficking, a $150 billion industry which worldwide impacts 27 million people a year.
I met my first trafficker at the age of 14 who took advantage of a lot of vulnerabilities that I had. I had some childhood trauma, came from a very disturbed family.
Heather Pagan is a survivor of human trafficking and tells her story as a way to help others, including in a new Fisher Films documentary, The Slave in Your Backyard.
If they want to ship you in a container, they can and they will.
It focuses on the subtle reality of human trafficking.
Predators hide in plain sight.
Experts say one of the biggest myths is that it only happens in other countries, when in fact, it's alive and well here in the United States.
Most people think about human trafficking, they think about sex trafficking. So when somebody is exploiting somebody for commercial sex. But human trafficking also involves forced labor. And so that's when someone is being forced to work for little or no pay.
Brandy Bynum with the Center for Countering Human Trafficking at the Department of Homeland Security says the pay they do earn is often handed over to their trafficker, who has threatened or exploited them. In other cases, the vulnerable fall victim to domestic servitude.
We have survivors in our network who were promised a job where they would come in, maybe babysit, go home. Now they're babysitting, they're working 19 hours a day, they're living in the house, they're cooking and cleaning. Some of our survivors were 12 and 13.
This West Virginia couple was recently found guilty of forced labor and human trafficking of their adopted children. Video played at trial showed them locked in a shed, forced to stand all day and sleep on the floor with minimal food or opportunities to bathe. In its most recent Trafficking in Persons report, the State Department highlighted a disturbing trend by traffickers known as forced criminality, coercing their victims to engage in or support criminal activities ranging from working as part of online scan operations to commercial sex, later threatening that if they seek help, they will be prosecuted for the unlawful acts, contributing to a vicious and often undetected cycle of trafficking in American cities and towns. For Spotlight on America, I'm Christine Frizzau.
Coming up next year, the new fire-resistant homes that are making a big difference in high-risk neighborhoods. Will be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Rhode Island, where hairstylist who travels to help kids with disabilities is facing a major setback.
Kristen Schober has been driving around Rhode Island for years, cutting the hair of people with overload in a typical salon or barbershop. So she creates a sensory-friendly space.
Root over the winter time, and so putting the tulips in the ground right after Helene was very important for our
4 minutes in, and the mulch on the left side is starting to smolder. 8 minutes in, there are now flames, and by the 12-minute mark, those flames have spread to the porch, while the right side remains virtually untouched. The difference? It's following standards developed by the nonprofit Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS.
Their program takes that to a little bit of a different level.
Steve Ruffner is the president of KB Home Coastal, the company behind the country's first fire-resistant and fire-prepared neighborhood in Escondido. All 64 homes in the Dixon Trails neighborhood are designed to protect against direct flame contact, radiant heat, and embers.
Coming up, it's a big weekend for college basketball as we head into the Final Four. Why this combination of teams is historic. College basketball tips off its Final Four. For only the second time in the tournament's rich history, all four teams will be #1 seeds. The first time was in 2008. Saturday's matchup, starting at 6:09 Eastern, are between teams that know each other very well. Southeastern Conference rivals Florida Gators versus the Auburn Tigers. Then around 8:50, Houston Cougars take on the Duke Blue Devils. Fans already pouring into San Antonio for the weekend, and they are coming from all over the country.
Yeah, we're from Chicago.
I'm from Michigan.
Maine.
This is a bucket list item, so yeah, love it. I'm just here to see Cooper Flag.
Good game. We want to see a good game.
Yeah.
That's what we want to see.
I
think they're going to be close games.
We know whoever wins, there will be a great matchup Monday for the championship. That's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again tonight for more coverage of America's top stories starting at 10 p.m. Eastern. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching, and we will see you tonight.